Welcome back to today's daily coffee chat. I am back as your host for the last time this week, Amber Pike, the editor of Kids Matter magazine. Ryan will be back next week, but I'm so excited to be with you here today. It's the end of July. Today is also my brother and my niece's birthday, so happy birthday to them. But the end of July kind of marks almost 5 months of this weird pandemic, in church, not in church, online church situation that we found ourselves in. And most of us aren't really a big fan of it. Your church has either been in quarantine or you've been shut down. Your attendance has been low. You've been trying to figure out online church, how to engage with families online. If you're back up and starting to open, not all of your families are there. You have the risk. Some of you I'm seeing are having to shut back down when cases come back up. You're social distancing, you're limiting your contact with your kids. You're not getting hugs and high fives. You're limiting games and activities. For us, we're trying to not use supplies that multiple kids are touching. We want to keep germs and contact down. In the kids' lives, sports are shut down. Activities, piano, library. We're missing our summer reading program at the library. All of these things are affecting kids, and even school. Right now, that's a big topic for the whole nation, is what's going to happen when kids come back to school. I'm seeing there's the option of the NTI, the non-traditional instruction, where they're learning online at home. Some schools are having a hybrid where they'll go to school a couple days, but then they'll be home a couple days. Some of them are going to a completely online academy style. It's just a crazy, crazy time that we're in. And it's affecting kids. It's affecting them big time. And we're going to talk today about how this social distancing is affecting kids. A little story on me. I grew up in a really small country church. And most of my childhood and teen years, there wasn't an active children or youth ministry. There was at times, but for the majority of my formative years, the only children or teens, it was my brother and I. But my mom never wanted to leave that church because that was her church. But it never bothered me that we didn't have a thriving children's ministry, that we didn't go to camp. We had VBS, but we didn't have camps or tons of kids and friends and big youth groups and all that. We didn't have that. But for me, that wasn't a big deal because I had really close relationships with adults at my church. I lost both of my grandmas when I was 10. And that year, I had so many important women in my life at my home church come and say, I'll be your grandma now. And some of them still introduce themselves to people as my adopted grandma. I had really close relationships with so many adults, and it was so important to shaping me into who I am. Statistically, we've seen that children are more likely to remain in church when they have an adult invested in their lives, an adult that's not mom or dad. This is super important for kids. And we're going to touch on this today, but I have a guest, and it's a very special guest because she is one of those important people in my life growing up. But she's not just someone that grew up with me and saw me through my teen years. She is also a retired professor emeritus of U of L. Dr. Sandra Graves, if you want to come on in. I'm so excited she's here. She works in the field of psychology. She's an author. She's a retired professor. She's done art therapy and a whole bunch more to her name. But most importantly to me, she's one of those special people in my life from my church. So, Miss Sandra, thank you for being here today.
Oh, you're welcome. I just hope that I can fulfill your expectations because I haven't lived through anything like this either.
No one has.
I'm old.
So tell us a little bit just about you and your field of study and career.
Well, I started the U of L program in master's degree in art therapy in 1969. And it was the first one anywhere. We also started the association, and I've been very involved in pioneering, basically. And in doing that, I've had to integrate in a lot of information from a lot of different fields because it is one of those fields where you put psychology and psychiatry and art and development and so on together. And I taught at U of L for 30 years and then retired because I started there when I was about 10. And then I opened up a couple of businesses and did private practice. In the meantime, I had some background in law school. So what I have ended up doing to cut across 30, 40 years now is I am very busy today in forensic expressive therapies. And I'm with the Shelton Forensic Solutions Group. And I evaluate people who are usually plaintiffs in wrongful death actions and other kinds of traumas.
That's awesome.
Which I did all my life anyway, working in trauma.
So you are definitely qualified in your field.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're talking today about the impact that all of this social distancing, this social isolation that we're seeing kids, how is it affecting children?
Depends on the age, Amber. For one thing, if you remember when you were talking about church, there was a little room where we took you all, and it was the nursery. And then you were around other little kids. And about what age, 7, 8, 9, we brought you into the church. Yeah. And you listened to stuff. You had no idea what was going on, but everybody adored you. And by the way, she can sing. Really. So you had a lot of, you said grandparents. That is a very nurturing church. And I think that let's segue that into the nurturing home environment, where we have to realize that our children, depending upon their age, have certain needs that are met only through socialization. For example, setting boundaries. Now, we as parents set boundaries. You set boundaries professionally, but boundary setting doesn't really get in about until the time of kindergarten. Preschoolers, you try and get them to sit around in a circle, and you know what I'm talking about.
Not happening.
But that's part of brain development, and I'm going to show you something. Can you see my hand? Okay. There is a brilliant man named Dr. Siegel who explains the brain like this. And I think for you parents, this should be helpful. This part of the hand, you can put your hand up if you want to. This part of the hand is brainstem. We're born with that. If we don't have it, we aren't going to be born, or we're not going to live. Okay, the brainstem is autonomic. It makes our heart beat. It makes our lungs expand. It does all the things that we don't even think about. Okay, as the child grows, this area, see the thumb? That's the midbrain, and it's called the limbic system. And this is where emotions start coming in. You know about the crazy 2s and 3s and temper tantrums and all of that.
We're living that now.
Oh, yes. Well, that's the only way they really know how to express discomfort, because this part, which is the neocortex, hasn't developed sufficiently. Okay, so how do you, depending upon the age, go from here to here? Well, sometimes kids don't. And I think that one of the things that is happening right now is that parents and even administrators and teachers aren't sure what to do in terms of school and online and being together. And so they're coming up with some, I think, kind of bizarre ideas. My daughter is a teacher, and at her school, they have literally made little cages where they can see this side, and forward. And so they will sit and they will look through the cages, and then there'll be a plastic wall. That is so not inhumane, it's just like so unnatural.
Yeah.
Okay, so they start getting antsy, and then this part is closing down. So what we need to do when the kids start getting antsy is actually regress to the limbic and the brainstem and get them up and move, do something creative, do some dancing, do some singing, um, do some art, any number of things that will help reopen and kind of flush out the feelings that are being stomped down into this area. Now that can't be all the time.
Yeah.
Because back to boundaries, we have to have boundaries. And the thing about school is that there was a definite schedule. We knew, okay, we got up at this ungodly hour, got our kids onto the bus, maybe if they were dressed, and they got to school and they knew what to expect. And then they come home and they know what to expect. It's pretty difficult now.
Yeah.
For not only the kids, but adults, what to expect. So I think it's incumbent upon adults and grandparents. And in fact, as a grandparent, this whole social distancing thing is just driving me crazy because I can't hug my grandkids.
Yeah.
And touch and hug, and those are warm. And to me, those are spiritual. And when we are helping our children to grow, we have the physical training, we have the mental, we have the emotional, the social, and the spiritual. And if one of those is missing, we're out of kilter like that. So in some ways, what we need to do is to figure out, and God knows how, well, he probably does, but how to do that when nobody is agreeing exactly or is consistently agreeing on what's going on. Should you wear a mask? Should you not wear a mask? Can you breathe with a mask? I don't know. It's also kind of amusing. Have you seen all the ads for different masks people are selling?
Yeah. Crayons got them out.
All everybody. Industry. Right. So I think that we're going to have to come together educationally. We can learn a lot from people who have done homeschooling, because they know they have to set certain schedules, and the homeschoolers have certain times where they get other homeschoolers together. Now, my daughter's kids, when this first started, chose their friends who had the same restrictions they did, so that there would be a group that they could turn to and be with. Now, it may or may not be a little late for that for some, but maybe not. If you know that your friends has been inside and hasn't been out to the shopping center and all of that, you can start by getting the kids kind of together, at least outside. And also, depending upon the age, maybe they can create certain games to make this funny. It's not a funny situation, but just to laugh about it. Here we are, I'm in my cage, I want out, please. Some kind of singing, or some of those games that we used to play, like gossip, where one person on Zoom will say something and block out the next one and tell them, and then they have to come up with it and see what happens at the end. I think using your creativity is really, really important. That, and a feeling of safety, because just because you're in a cage doesn't make you feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, it makes you feel trapped, which generates fear, which pours adrenaline through the body. The adrenaline then starts a stress cycle, and you end up with a very anxious, nervous, frightened kid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So my 9-year-old, he is a creature of habit. He likes a schedule. It was really bad when he was younger, to where every night before we went to bed, we would have to go through what our day holds, what we're going to do for the day. So I see that
Yeah.
kids, they need that consistency, that planning. And we homeschool, and we're a little more, we don't always start at the same time every day, but knowing what's expected of you, knowing, all right, you have these
Exactly.
things, you have school on this day, just that routine, that habit. And when they broke, because for kids, it was, I would think, very traumatizing almost, because it was all at once. I mean, everything was fine, and then it all shut down.
In fact, I'm glad you brought that up, because research is showing that adverse childhood experiences are responsible for poor health in later life. Mm-hmm. And if one of those is traumatic, then it actually rewires the brain. And the therapy that we use for that is called bottom up. And it is movement and music and art and that sort of stuff to break loose all of those fearful mm-hmm. feelings and put them into some context that is positive. I just wish that everybody knew who to trust when you hear something on the mm-hmm. television or radio, so that the kids are all being told kind of the same thing, and their parents. Yeah, go ahead.
I think as leaders, we have to make sure that we are presenting our opinions and feelings on it in a good light, because we can be as frustrated as we want to be. We can hate wearing masks or hate having to distance, but we have to be easy with how we respond to kids, because they're watching us. They're going to mimic us, because if we're one of those important people in their lives, they're watching us. But also in that, like you said, that giving them that feeling of safety and making sure that we don't stop that feeling of love. That's, I think, one of the biggest roles of a children's ministry leader, is to love on the kids. We're showing them the love of Jesus through our actions.
Absolutely.
Even if they're in a little box or a hula hoop or a rug to keep them distant from other people, we still have to find ways to show them, hey, we still love you, even if we can't interact and we can't touch and hug and high five the way that we used to.
Yeah. And of course, there's always this kind of mime thing, or bring out the stuffed animals and the fluffy blankets, and actually bring the kids in on the planning, particularly if they're a little older. Because they kind of know what they need. Now, if you're talking about a teenager, they want to be with their girlfriend or boyfriend or best friend or whatever most of the time. And that's not too realistic. But the other part of that, I just thought about this back long before you were born. In the late 70s, we had terrible, terrible snow, such that the city was unable to clear the roads. And so we were locked into our home. We couldn't even get out of the driveway. And people were getting cabin fever and so on. You know what we ended up doing in the whole neighborhood is we went out and we shoveled the dang driveways and the streets. And together we found an escape. Now, I know that it's a little bit different this way, but there might be a way that together the kids and the parents can find a solution.
I think we see in the age that we live in, with so much shutdown, kids are at home more, and I think that's an increase in screen time. I know, churches had to adapt because we want to still be bringing the message of Christ to kids. So we went online, but school also went online. And we heard as the weeks moved on, so many kids, the phrase was they're zoomed out. They're tired of being online. It's not the same. It's not the same as being with your best friend.
No, absolutely not.
But that's still their world. So if left to their own devices, a lot of kids are going to stay on all day. They're going to be playing their games or watching shows or, whatever. And we lose out on the connectivity that they so crucially need when it's all screen-based.
Let me tell you something that my daughter did with her two. She has one teenager and one tweenager. And the tweenager, who is 12, almost 13, moved every one of her stuffed animals that she had gathered for 12 years into the living room. And she remade the room into something that was comfortable and fun. And then she'd have mother talk to these various animals and redecorate. Yeah, I thought it was adorable.
Yeah. So the next issue of Kids Matter magazine has a really awesome article coming out about just online ministry, because we're not out of this yet. So if you all haven't subscribed to Kids Matter magazine, make sure you do. Sean Sweet wrote us an excellent article, because for the now, a lot of us keeping your kids engaged together, connected together, giving that peer interaction that they need, it's in an online setting. So you can do small groups online. You can use Zoom or Google Hangout. Facebook just announced a new group. Right. And even though kids are zoomed out, if that's your only option, I think it's still a good option to keep them together. We at my church, we just did our VBS, and we live streamed it through our church's website. And we turned on the chat feature. We normally don't have that on during worship, but we did for VBS. And it was so fun to see the kids just chatting with each other. They were doing silly and talking with each other, not necessarily about what was going on at the screen all the time, but just they needed to be together.
They need to laugh.
Yes.
They need to giggle again and feel that inner child silliness that we as adults need to do too. Something about this has to be funny.
And fun. And that's been a struggle for me, is to figure out how to keep my kids safe, social distance, to where they're not cross-contaminating with things, or keeping the preschoolers in their little box. That one's rough. But I want it to still be fun. And it's extra challenging to figure out, how do I make a lesson engaging in a social distance setting? Because we don't have big space. The rooms at my church are really weird. They're long and skinny. We don't have large rooms. We're waiting on construction to happen to where we get this large room, but my kids have to stay in their box. Their chair is in a little box 6 feet away from another box. And to figure out how to add in games that they can do that don't touch each other, or activities that they can do at their chair, getting them up and down, it's rough.
Can they decorate their boxes? Can they make them into designer boxes?
If we had the same kids every week, that would be an option, but we've been back about a month, and it's really fluid as to who's there. My son's there every week because he comes with mom, but it's been really like 1 week we'll have a really good turnout, and then the next week we'll have 2 kids. Mm-hmm. It's still that fear I think families have, because it kind of coincides with what the news is saying about the numbers, is where we're seeing attendance.
You should be my age. My kids wrote down, it is really hard training my mother.
I bet you would stay in your box though. No, you wouldn't stay. You'd be going and giving a hug in your box.
I'm talking to you.
So kids need that. Kids need that connection with their peers and with their adults. So do you have any suggestions of ways that we can help them connect in this weird age that we're in?
Well, let's start with parents understanding maybe what their kids really need. And I'm going to recommend a book to you. Yes. It's by Dr. Daniel Siegel, and it's called The Whole Brain Child. and it's very easy to read, and it explains what is needed at different stages in terms for the child to integrate their whole body and whole person. And there's also one he wrote called Brainstorm on teenagers. I turned to music, the arts, dancing, coming up with their own game, guessing games. Actually, I think the more creative the adult can be and model it appropriately, then that gives permission to the kids too. And rather than say, oh, that's stupid, or oh, we're not going to do that, talk about what their suggestion is. Say, okay, how do you think that would handle, and what do you think would happen, and how do you think Joey feel about that? And make it their idea, but add empathy to it, as well as a little bit of cognitive problem solving.
Now, you've mentioned like the art and the music before. Would you suggest like this needs to be something to help them express their feelings, or just, hey, we're just drawing today? So both. Is it okay?
Both, because the brain stem and the limbic area respond to movement and emotion. And your arts materials, whether it's your body and dance and movement, or whether it is clay or paint, which has a different response from the body, those are your partners in development of creative outlets. And if some of it happens to bring with it an emotion that the kid is grappling with, that'd be great. Or you can give themes, how mad are you about staying in this box? Or how many things can you think of to get out? Or just basically relate it to the reality of what they're doing, not what they can't do.
Yeah. So the more
make that fun.
The more arts and the more fun that we can add into our lessons at church is going to benefit the child, even if it's just lesson related. So if we're talking about Noah, we'll have them draw a picture of Noah, or maybe we have
become an elephant or a mosquito getting on the ark.
Hey, I actually know a great game with mosquitoes. Center Kid does a game called Mosquito Tag, and you have a pool noodle. So, hey, we'd be 6 feet apart.
There you go.
That's your stinger, and you have to, it's tagged. So if you have a lot of room, and your stinger, when you tag someone, then you have to scratch like you've been bit by a mosquito, and then someone comes along and sprays you with off bug spray, and then you're back in the game. So there we go.
Oh, how cute. Yeah, stuff like that. That's very creative. It uses the whole brain and body, and it's fun.
So Kidmin leaders, we need to be looking at how can we add more games that induce giggles, more art, more of those supplies to get out those feelings, the drawing, writing, writing poetry maybe, sculpting, painting, and then music.
Get a bunch of drums. Oh, that'll drive you nuts.
Or shaker eggs, they're a little quieter. So with games, so for us, like I said, we're trying to have games that limit contact, even with supplies. So right now, on-screen games are really popular. So don't forget that kidsmatter.com has a bunch of games, screen games, video-based games, PowerPoint games. Great. Another resource that you all can use is Download Youth Ministry. You'll have to sort through because some of them are more teen geared, but they also have some great ones that work for kids. And if you haven't used their Sidekick app is fabulous, really interactive. And then I found a new one that was recommended on the I Love Kidmin site. It's called asphaltgreen.org. ASPHALT green.org. And they have a whole page of social distant games. And some of them are like the game Shipwreck or Captain's Coming, where you give kids commands like swab the deck. And when you say swab the deck, they have to drop on or they have to clean the deck. Or you say captain's coming and they have to like salute. So it's at their spot.
Oh, that's great.
But they're not touching, they're not running everywhere. Because for us with the preschoolers, keeping them at their lock is rough.
Yeah, their boundaries have to be a little bit stronger. Do you actually paint asphalt green on this thing?
No, that's just the name of the website, asphaltgreen.org. But they had pages and they broke it up too by age as well. So they had like a younger section and then an older section. And then there's like a whole printout. You can print out the instructions for the game. And they seem really low prep, low supplies. This one was up, down, stomp, clap. And you give the commands and the kids have to put their arms up or put their arms down. They have to stomp their feet or clap. So just all those things to get kids moving. It's going to help your lesson flow better as well, because it's rough on kids. My son, he's been at home for 4 months solid. He didn't go anywhere except for Grammy's 3 doors down. He's struggling now that we're back at church because he's like, oh, wait, there's people. I want to talk to my friends. Other kids who have some issues that they receive therapy for. Well, during this, they weren't receiving the therapy because everybody shut down. So now that they're back,
don't rule out
therapy.
Filter. Yeah.
No,
you just gave me an idea too. And that is the idea of the older kids mentoring online with the younger kids, where, they can demonstrate or they can talk or they can say, I know how do you feel about this or that? And that's introducing them then to, the range of ages and thoughts.
We have a really unique blend at my church with our teens and our kids. I love it so much. Our teens are not just helpers in children's church, but they genuinely like the kids. They like hanging out. We've created, well, actually, it on its own. It wasn't me as much as I wish I could take credit for it. But there's this just beautiful relationship between the kids and the teens. And I've been noticing as we've been coming back that the teens miss the kids too. It's not the same as hanging out with their teen friends, but they've missed hanging out with the kids and they're talking to them and they're engaging with them. They're not as get out of the youth room as they were before because they missed it. Unless it's their sibling. If it's their sibling, they want nothing to do with them because they've seen too much of them. But I've noticed that relationship between our teens and our kids, they missed each other too.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Family.
We're creating a whole new world. And I'm just saying, and we aren't quite sure where it's going or what we're going to do with it, but we're smart people and we have our bodies and our minds and we have God and we'll make it through this. It might be some rather interesting creative things that'll happen, but we'll make it.
And I think we find what works and what doesn't work pretty quickly.
Oh, yeah.
I know a lot of churches would try Facebook challenges to get families doing stuff together. And for some churches, it went amazing. And other churches, it just fell flat. Some people have had great success with doing Zoom lessons or Hangouts, and other churches, no one shows up. So it's just finding out what works for your people and the needs of your individual kids, because every kid is different. And the kids in your ministry are different than the kids in my ministry. And then finding ways to connect with families, because again, like I said, some families are back, some are not back, some are here 1 week, not for the next couple of weeks, because mom and dad are being affected by this too.
Oh,
they're being affected by their kids. Not
absolutely
having what was normal.
And
so
when you work, I mean, you and I are mothers, but we also have professions. And all of a sudden we have professions and these people running around, the kids, and I don't think we've been taught to deal with that. So we're going to have to help each other. Do we have any mother support groups, dad support groups?
I mean, there are some. I don't know that there's any ministry ones specifically that I know of, but I think that's a great opportunity for KidMin leaders to reach out to moms and dads and find out, hey, are you okay? How are you doing? I've seen a lot of talk about homeschool support groups. A lot of the
Oh,
nation
yeah.
are now saying, nope, we're going to homeschool, because they can't do that 2 days in school, 3 days not, or they don't want the online or the non-traditional. So a lot of families are choosing to homeschool for the first time. So that brings up the question for church leaders: how can you go in and love on mom who's homeschooling for the first time or for the 10th time? How can you help? I've seen churches are now asking, well, can we create a study hall kind of homeschool group where they can come to church and they can be around other kids? So that's a new opportunity that's
that'd be
presented,
great.
is we can connect with the families from the school aspect in a way we couldn't before. Other ways we
Gotcha.
can connect with families: be reaching out to them, snail mail, send kids notes and postcards. That's another way that we can just love on them. Send them stuff in the mail if they're not yet back in the building. The power of a phone call is still important. Tina Hauser had posted in the I Love Kidmin group a while back, last week, I think, that she sent an individualized email. So not just hey, this is Miss Amber checking up on everyone, but an individual email tailored to the moms, a lengthy one. And she said, I think within an hour, she had 9 out of 15 lengthy replies, not just a thanks, but oh my goodness, this means so much. That it was that personal connection that, hey, I still love on you all, even if we're not together.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So do you have any other thoughts or suggestions, just ways that we can help kids or mom and dad just with
I wish I
dealing with
did.
this?
It is as mysterious to me at my age as probably it is to you. It's not our normal.
Mm-mm.
And I'm not sure. I mean, I'm sure there are good parts of it, bad parts of it, but it's taking time to sort those things out and thinking them through and talking with people like you. This has been great for me to hear some of your ideas, and help each other. I mean, I guess that's one good thing about this crazy bunch of technology, which at my age, when you say push a button, I say, where's the button? All the way to in fact, I don't know if you've seen the ad on TV where the grandkids are coming to visit and the grandparents run out with their computers in their hands. Say, help! But I mean, we're still one world, and no matter what. And I know another thing too. The keep all the hate messages away from your kids, and talk about that. I mean, depending upon which television programs you watch, you're going to see stuff you don't want your kids to hear, or you don't want your kids to absorb, or that you need to talk to your kids about. We don't have any privacy anymore. You know, we're a global goldfish bowl. And sometimes there's sharks out there, and I don't like it.
Yeah. And I do. I've seen that just in my ministry career. I'm really careful what I say to the kids, because it's not my opinion. They don't need my opinion on that. But like during this whole COVID situation, what I feel about it is irrelevant, but I need to be doing what my church has decided. I need to, if it's mask or distancing or not meeting in person, whatever the decision is, I need to represent that. And I need to do it with a good attitude, because they're modeling that. They take their cues from us. So Kidmin leaders, be conscientious of your words, your expressions. If you make it exciting for them to sit in a little box, it's exciting for them to sit in a little box.
That's right.
Even if they would normally hate it. But if you're excited about it, be like, oh, look at that. You get your own hula hoop today. I wish I had the red hula hoop. It's a little more exciting. So I think really what I've gathered from you in this is we need to add more fun, add more laughter, because it's a rough situation, and more creativity. Let them get up and move their body. Let them use their brains and let their emotions out by creating something, because it's rough on them. And it's rough on us.
It's rough on all of us too. And I guess that I'll close with something for the parents. And that is, when everybody's nice and snug in their beds and food and warm and so on, get in your car and drive out to a field or a desert. Get out of the car and scream.
I think we all have those days as a parent, as a ministry leader, where we need a little time to ourselves and we need to let it out to Jesus.
You got it. You got it.
Well, Miss Sandra, thank you so much for joining us today. And I know this has benefited me, and I know the other people watching.
Oh, I'm so proud of you. I remember you when you've always been taller than I was. And I loved singing with you, and I love you and your family. And so this has been fun. I really enjoyed it.
So much.
Do it again. I don't know what more I could add, but
no,
you're doing great. I'm proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you. And
say hello to your mom.
Hi, I will. Thank you.
Give her my love.
I will. Thank you, Miss Sandra. So having her on today was twofold, because she is definitely an expert in her field, but I wanted to show you guys just the power of having those adults that are important to kids. Kids need to feel loved all the time, not just in the middle of a pandemic. They need their peers. They need outlets just to hang out with their friends. So maybe you're scheduling a little bit of lesson time just so they can talk to their friends. My son, we asked him one day in the midst of this, what do you miss about church? And his answer was, I miss Sunday school with my friends. They miss that. They need that. Kids need their peers. That's a fact. They need their peers. But they also need adults invested in them. So that's you leaders, that's your volunteers. That might just be someone in the congregation that they see every week and they go and they talk to. So I challenge you to think of ways that you can connect kids, not just to each other, though that's important, not just with your ministry, but that's important. But how can you connect them to the church body, especially if families aren't yet back? They're losing that connection with the church family. So I really challenge you, make an intentional effort, KidMin leaders, to connect with your families and your kids. This week, send out some emails, some postcards, make some phone calls. Let your kids and your families know that you love them and that you're there for them. It's a different time that we're living in, and it's definitely affecting our kids as it's affecting all of us. But I think this has been great, just maybe giving us some new ideas. They need more laughter. They need more games and art to express themselves, but that love that they need doesn't stop just because we're 6 feet away. So KidMin leaders, thank you so much for joining us today. I have had a blast hosting the last couple of days, and we will see you next week when Ryan Frank's back for the coffee chat. Bye.